The first thing I want us to do though is one big part of programming is always staying organized. And we've made 2 or 3 programs so far, and they've just been put into our drive. So before we do anything with actually creating the program, I want you to go to New, Folder, and name that Computer Science. Maybe Computer Science Practice or something like that. That way, just all of your programs can just go into this one folder, and you don't need to be looking for them throughout your drive. You just look for this folder, and they're all there. So once you do that, you can go in there, and then you're going to go to New, More, Drive Notepad. All right, now that we're in Drive Notepad, let me zoom in on this a little bit so that it's easier for you to see. We're going to start creating our class. I'm going to name this class Public Class Comments and Variables, and then open and close my brackets. And inside that class, I'm going to make my main method public static void main open parentheses string array args. Let's see, I accidentally put a P, didn't leave the array. And then after that, I'll put my brackets there. So if you want, at any point, just pause the video so that you can copy down what you need to copy down. Once I've done that, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to actually name my file and save it so that I don't lose my progress if anything happens. So I'm going to name it exactly the same as the name of my class up here. So I will name it Comments and Variables and then put a .java at the end there. I'll hit enter and detect the language, and you see once I've detected the language, the color automatically changes for some things there. All right, now that I have my class name and I have my main method, let's start with learning the new things. So we've already seen system.out.println, and in there you can print stuff out, and this will be what the program prints out when you compile and run it. We've also seen how to create or declare variables. So we've seen how to create an integer variable, and you just write int. This part here says, hey, I'm making an integer variable, and this next part will be the name of it. So maybe I'll just call it num1. And so this is a variable that I made that is of type integer, and I'm naming it num1. And then here I can give it a value. I'll say maybe num1 is equal to 13. And now I set the value of num1. I set the value of my variable integer num1 to the value 13. And we can think of that as when I created the variable, I made a little box and its name was num1. Oh geez, this is gross. And now when I just did the second part right here, I set it equal to 13. I just put that number 13 into the box. So num1 is my variable, and it's holding this value 13 inside of it. So we've already seen all these things. I'm just recapping for this first video. Now, the first thing we're going to see is about comments, the first new thing. If you want to make a comment in your program, you just put 2 slashes, and then after those 2 slashes, you just write whatever you want. So here I'm going to write declaring my variable. So what comments do is actually absolutely nothing. The whole point of a comment is that if you don't understand something in your program, or if you're working on an assignment and you have to come back to it later, you're just kind of writing in plain English, or honestly whatever language you want, what you're doing there, instead of having to remember what this line in programming means. You can write comments about anything. I can even write a comment outside of my class. I could say, this is a comment outside of my class. And as long as I have these 2 slashes over here, it's not going to complain, and it will work. If I just had that out there like this, your program will not compile. But here it's just a comment. It doesn't mess anything up. So I'm going to add some more comments just to say what I'm doing on each line here. So num1 is equal to 13. Here I can say setting the value of my variable to 13. And so again, all I'm doing with this comment is just saying what I'm doing in plain English instead of having to know what it is just by looking at the code. And then finally here, maybe I'll put this comment above it. I'm saying printing out stuff to the console. And that's about it for comments. You might not see their use yet, but when we start getting to really long programs, when we're making complicated things, it's going to be helpful to write comments of what you want to do without having to figure it out in the code. Just kind of write, oh, I want this to do that, and then you can kind of mess around with the code and still have in you know, a plain regular language what your thoughts are, what you're trying to do at that point. So that is the first part. The second part is, you know, I said comments and variables is the name of this class. I want us to look at what different things we can do with variables. So we've created a variable, we've declared a variable, is what that's called. We've initialized a variable, which just means, let me say, initializing variable. And initializing a variable is just setting the value of that variable to something for the first time. And there's a whole lot of other different things we can do with variables. So one thing I can do is all the different types of math. So I've got addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And on this computer, in this program, we can do each one of these different types of arithmetic. So if I want to do addition, I will just use the plus symbol. If I want to use subtraction, right next to the plus symbol, lowercase, is a little dash. That looks like a minus symbol. If I want to do multiplication, I'll be using Shift 8, which is a little asterisk. This is the sign for multiplication in Java. And if I want to do division, it is just a single one of these dashes. It's kind of like a fraction. You know, I could write like 4 over 12, and this would be dividing. So I can use any of these operations when I'm doing math. There's actually a couple others, but we'll stick with those for now. And here's how I would do that. Instead of just setting num1 equal to 13, I can maybe say num1 is equal to 5 plus 3. And so now what this does is it first looks at the right side of the equal sign always, and it says, all right, I'm going to do the math here. So 5 plus 3, that's going to get me 8. Once it gets the solution to whatever is happening on this side, it takes that and puts that value into num1. So I had 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 I'm now going to put into num1. So now let's erase this and say, hey, instead of being the number 13, I just switch it, so now I'm holding the value of 8. Oh, why did I always do 8? 8 is really hard to draw with a mouse. Look at that. So now num1 will be holding the value 8. You can reset the value of a variable as many times as you want. So maybe I want to say, let me give myself some space in the bottom so that it's not just all the way at the bottom of your screen. Let's say I want to do something else. Maybe num1 is equal to 8 divided by 2. And so this will say, all right, 8 divided by 2, that's 4. Now num1 is going to be holding on to the value of 4. And if I come in here looking at what it has, instead of having the number 8, it's going to replace it. And now it says, hey, num1 is holding the value 4. Cool. Now, you can have more than one variable in your program, and this will be the last thing we do in this video. I can declare more than one variable. So maybe I'll create another variable up here, and I'll call it num2. A cool thing is that the right side of my equal sign here doesn't just need to be numbers that I put in. I can use other variables. So once I set num1, at this point, setting num1 to equal 4, at this point I know that num1 is holding on the value 4, right? Because 8 divided by 2 is 4. I can say, all right, num2 is going to be equal to num1 plus 1. And so think about it. What is now going to be the value of num2? Well, num1 we just found has the value of 4 in it. So I'm just going to say, all right, well, num1 has 4 in it. I'm going to add 1 to it. That means this side of the equal sign is 5. So I'm going to set num2 to be equal to 5. Cool. Now at this point, all I'm going to do is just finish up this program and try to run and compile it to see what it looks like. So I'm going to do a system.out.print line statement, and I'm going to print out the value of num2. Remember, if you have a variable inside of your printout statement and you don't put quotes around it, it is going to actually print out the value that that variable is holding. So I'm going to print out the value of num1 or num2, and I'll also print out, just for the heck of it, the value of num1. So here I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back into Google Classroom, find that compiler executor, which is right here. I'll delete everything in here, and let's copy and paste. I'm going to hit Control A to copy it, hold Control, hit C to, or sorry, Control A was to select all of it. Control C is to copy it, bring it over here, Control V to paste all of it, and now let's try to compile and execute here. Compiling, it says over here, successfully compiled. And let's see, it says print stuff out, and then it says 4, and then it says 5. And that's exactly what we wanted it to do, right? The very last time, I can set num1 as many times as I want, but the last time is the one that really matters. So I set num1 equal to 8 divided by 2, which is 4. I set num2 equal to 4 plus 1, which is going to be 5. And then I said, all right, I'm going to print out this thing in quotes, print stuff out, which is what it printed right there. I'm going to print out num1, and printing out num1 without quotes around it prints out the value that num1 is holding, which is 4. And I'm going to print out the value that num2 is holding, which is 5. So this program worked out perfectly. Nice job.